So in our previous podcasts and social media, we've been talking about a lot about people asking about coverage and insurance coverage. Well, 99% of my cases we deal with insurance coverage. And one of the most common, and I'm telling you the most common question that I get from clients is, I have full coverage. What do I have? What is that? Doesn't that protect me from everything? And the answer is usually no. Full coverage, from what I hear from clients, usually means that you have the minimum. So today I have on the board here a sample declarations page. A declarations page is the page on your insurance that you have it, whatever policy you have, whether it's Geico, State Farm, Allstate, you're going to have what's called a declarations page. It's going to list your coverages. So today I'm going to show you what I think the common thinking is of what full coverage is versus what full coverage actually should be. Okay, so if you look at this declarations page, we've whited out the names of the people just to show you as an example. This is an actual client that I represented in a case where we recently settled the case, and this was the client's declarations page showing the coverages. So if you take a look, there's different parts here, and I have purposely bold-faced these. But one of the first sections of insurance is going to deal with liability. Liability is your responsibility for something that you did wrong. For instance, you were negligent, you rear-ended somebody. So that's what liability in Part A covers. So the first level is bodily injury. Bodily injury, in this case, the driver has bodily injury coverage up to $500,000 per person. So if one person is injured, the maximum they can get is $500,000, and per accident, you'll see it's $1 million. So the maximum that all people can get, let's say 3 people are injured in an auto accident, and you're at fault, the maximum amount of insurance on this policy is $1 million. So the 3 persons or the 4 persons or the 5 persons that are at fault, the most they can get combined is $1 million. Now again, bodily injury only covers your liability if you're responsible. Is it part of the full coverage? No, it's not required. You're not required to purchase bodily injury coverage. So if you injure someone in an accident and you don't have insurance, you're on your own defending that case. If you are injured in an accident, that person doesn't have bodily injury, you're on your own, unless you have uninsured motorist coverage, which we'll discuss in a minute. Property damage is another form of liability, and guess what? It's damage to the vehicle. So if you're at fault, again, under liability, for the damage you caused to a vehicle, you have some property damage liability coverage. In this example, this client had $100,000, so they would cover a vehicle up to $100,000 worth of damage. That insurance is part of the full coverage. It is required in the state of Florida. If you have auto insurance in Florida, you have property damage liability. Okay, that's part of the full coverage. Damage to another person's vehicle that was caused by your fault. Part B is medical payments coverage on this policy. Most of my clients, I would say over 95% of them, do not have this coverage. It's an optional coverage. You'll see there's a separate premium that you pay for it, and it covers you over and above your personal injury protection benefits, which are maxed out at $10,000 for most policies. So if you go to the hospital, regardless of whether you're at fault, and you have bills that exceed $10,000, you then tap into your medical payments. This client has $75,000 in medical payments. Medical payments coverage is under Part B. Part B is not like Part A. Part B is specific to you. Regardless of whether you're at fault, you're going to have medical payments coverage under this policy. The next one, though, personal injury protection, is part of the full coverage. So remember, we talked about property damage liability, and now we're talking about personal injury protection. That is part of the full coverage. And under Florida law, most policies will give you $10,000 regardless of whether you're at fault. So a lot of times you hear about Florida being a no-fault state. No fault is referring to personal injury protection. As the law stands today, that's part of the coverage, the full coverage. Uninsured motorist coverage is Part C. That covers you in the event that you get into an accident with a driver who has very little bodily injury or no bodily injury. So in this example, if my client is injured by another party and that party doesn't have any bodily injury coverage, we know one thing. We know my client has at least $500,000 per person for uninsured motorist coverage and $1 million for each accident. So if 2 people on this policy are injured, they have up to $1 million in uninsured motorist coverage, which kicks in after the lack of insurance or the amount of insurance that's available on the bodily injury side for the at-fault party. Okay? And Stacked, what does that mean? Well, that applies to the number of vehicles you have on the policy. So if you have 2 vehicles on the policy and you have a stacked uninsured motorist coverage of $500,000, it stacks it. So that means you have $1 million. If you have 3, you have $1.5 million. That's what stacked coverage is. This coverage is invaluable in the state of Florida. Why? Because people are not required to have bodily injury coverage. Okay, so if you get into an accident with someone that doesn't have it, you could be out of luck. A lot of people will say, and I'll end with this, I have health insurance. Why do I need to buy uninsured motorist coverage when it costs me $283 a month for this particular policy? Well, because uninsured motorist coverage pays for benefits that health insurance will not. For example, it pays your past medical bills, but it also pays the future medical bills you're reasonably certain to incur, which we will discuss in our next segment. And it also covers damages for pain and suffering, which there are no standards for that. So this is coverage that's going to cover you for things that health insurance does not. Invaluable insurance to purchase. If you need any consultation on this, I will offer you a free consultation just to talk to you about the insurance coverage you should be getting in the state of Florida.